So after my homily yesterday, I had a friend call me and say that he was driving down from a job and decided he needed to listen to a little bit of what I had to say, which was very flattering to know that people on their commute are listening to me while they're driving. He's not the smartest guy in the world, though, so it is what it is. But anyways, he said that he thought I was a little mean to the Francis de Sales folks yesterday. And on further review of the play, I happen to agree, not because it was my intention, but because my intention got lost. So I decided to take the homily down. This part of the homily can stay up, and people could just be like, "Well, what did he say?" And nobody will ever know. It'll be wonderful. The hits on this homily are going to just skyrocket because everybody's going to be like, "What did he say?" But the point I was trying to make yesterday that kind of got lost in the fact that I used a specific community, which I have absolutely no grievance against, or certainly their priests either, is just that sort of slavish mentality to the rules, that I'm doing the rules so that I can be better than, so that I'm not comparing myself to the freedom and the life that I have in Christ, but rather I'm just comparing myself to a slavish observance of the law, and I'm going to invent more laws or cling to old laws that don't actually exist anymore just to further show how great I am, right? That's not good, right? So, for example, I love when women wear mantillas in church, when they wear a veil in church. Personally, I veil my chalice. Why? Because it's precious and it's beautiful and it's sacred, right? And so that's a beautiful, wonderful tradition. However, it is not in the law of the church anymore since 1983. That's not a law in the church anymore. But the people who will insist, on doing that as if it is compulsory for them, and interiorly they're doing it as if it's compulsory, right? And then they look around and they say, "No, all these other people aren't doing it. They're not as good as I am because I'm following this rule." That's the problem that I was trying to get at, right? Because there's no freedom in that. That's not where the Lord wants our hearts, right? The rules. The rules and the laws of the church are meant to be, as I said before, the borders of a palette upon which something beautiful can be made, right? Up from the open space of freedom. So, anyways, I took that down because I don't want the message to get confused. I don't want people's feelings to get hurt unduly. I don't mind hurting people's feelings, but I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen if that's not the reason, right? So we did that. Now, to today's readings, to the actual homily, what do we make of this failed healing of Jesus, right? He goes up to this guy, he's blind, he wants to see, and Jesus puts hands on him, and it only sort of works, right? And Jesus says, "Okay, I laid hands on you. What do you see?" And he's like, "This guy's going to be excited." And the guy's like, "No, I'm even more confused than I was before. Now I see people and they look like what I imagine trees to look like." And they're just kind of, so he's got like 20/10 vision or something. I don't know how the visions work, but he's got real cloudy vision. It's not working. And Jesus lays his hands on him a second time. And finally, he can see clearly, and he's rejoicing, and he's exultant, and Jesus does what he always does with these healings. He's like, "Don't tell anybody." Yeah, right. What do we make of this? Well, this is not a failure on the part of the divine Lord to heal someone. In a spiritual reading of this text, I would recommend, or I would suggest, that one of two things happen. Either the man's faith was weak, and he needed that initial encounter with the Lord to convince him this is who he says he was. That initial weak faith was enough to get him to go a little bit, it was enough to get him to go to Jesus and experience a little bit of Jesus' divine presence, his divine reality. His heart was too small. His faith was not big enough. It couldn't fit Jesus in. And so this initial encounter with the Lord is enough to broaden his heart, enough to make room for the Lord, so that on the second approach, that second encounter, all of the Christ was able to reside in him and then to heal him fully. This is the second reason is that the Lord is making a point that not all things come to us immediately. Right? And there's a progression for us in our spiritual life. I have encountered the Lord so many times in real, visceral ways, and yet I still sin. I'm still imperfect. We look back at the Israelites. God splits a sea. God kills the firstborn of all the Egyptians. God buries all the Egyptian army in the Red Sea. God brings the Israelites through, and almost immediately afterwards they sin. And you're like, how could you do that? If I were there and I saw that, after that I would never sin again. But how quickly we forget, right? How quickly we forget all the good things that the Lord does for us. When things are good, we remember it all, and as soon as a season comes where it's not as good as it once was, we start to think to ourselves, the Lord has never done anything good for me. This is horrible. And we give ourselves permission out of a sense of entitlement or out of a sense of forgetfulness or whatever to sin. And we remain imperfect. But if we look around at the people around us, and more importantly at ourselves, I think we could recognize that we're better off than we once were. That we're holier today. At least we have an invitation to be holier today than we were yesterday. And it delights the Lord every time that we who were farther from him end closer to him. And if the Lord can make that 1,000 steps rather than one step, he can be delighted 1,000 times. As long as in the end we're perfect and we're made perfect by him, then his desire for us is accomplished. So what if he gets to wake up every morning when the sun rises and gets to see his beloved make yet one more closer step to him, and each closer step delights him? Why would you want to boil that down to one big step and then be done with it? Right? And you think, well, we're not toys for Jesus to play with. That's not what is happening here. Jesus is seeing the difficulty. He's seeing the sluggishness. He's seeing the laziness. He's seeing the entitlement. He's seeing the ego. He's seeing the selfishness. He's seeing the unruly passions. And each and every day he's seeing us contend with that. And yet, by and large, I would say, overcome those things and win victories. So that when we lay our heads down, we might, upon examining our conscience, think, oh, I've sinned there. I failed there. I offended them there when I didn't need to. I was selfish here and didn't give some of my bread to the hungry, whatever. Okay, great. You found 4 things you failed at that day. That took all of 3 minutes and 24 seconds of your day. What of the other 24 hours? The rest of that time when you were living with the Lord. And if you look back at your life 10 years ago and maybe you think to yourself, boy, half of my day was spent in sin 10 years ago, and now only 3 minutes and 24 seconds of my day is spent in sin. Can we not be grateful for that? I wouldn't say proud of it, but can't we be grateful that over the course of 10 years, our heart has expanded so much to let so much more of the Lord in? To be able to persist in virtue and in charity for that much more of our day, that much more of our life. Acknowledging that, yes, I'm not perfect yet, but boy, am I on the way. What you've done is over the course of those 10 years. Now, I'm not in any way saying that the sin that we've committed in that time was good, but that we don't commit that sin anymore. That's something good. That's something that we should be grateful for, right? And so we see the Lord making multiple attempts on this fella's sight, because progress is good. Progress is good. Progress towards the Lord is good. Progress towards the Lord delights him. And we have our entire life to progress to the Lord. Now, none of us might have any more time than right now. I mean, a meteor might come and land on St. Clair, and we're all dead, right? And then we don't have any more time to progress towards the Lord, and where we end is where we end, and the Lord has to make up the difference for us. But if we look back and we say, man, I'm better right now. How many of y'all, when you were 30, went to, those of you who aren't 30, how many of y'all who were 30 went to daily mass every day? Now, some of you might not have been able to because of your job, and that's fine. And now that you're retired, you can go to mass. How many of you, though, had the prayer life that you have today, that you could have had even when you were working, if you loved the Lord as much as you did today? How many of you had the prayer life 30 years ago, when you were 30 or whatever, than you do today? 1, 2. Okay. That's probably pretty normal. Y'all have made so much progress. Y'all have done so well in 30 years. When God acknowledges why he's not going to kill all of creation off again when humanity sins anymore, is because he recognizes that our hearts are from the beginning directed towards, what's he say? Never again will I doom the earth because of man, since his desires are evil from the start. From the beginning, when Adam and Eve fell, our hearts were twisted in an unnatural way, and we desired unnatural things in an unnatural way. And the Lord is acknowledging that. He's saying to us as children, y'all are hurt. You're wounded. I'm not going to get mad at you anymore for being wounded, but I am going to offer you healing. And if you don't take it, that's going to be on you. And so he sends us his Son. And we see one of the first invitations of the Father to this blind beggar. You're broken. I don't blame you for that. But I'm inviting you to be healed. It's not okay that you're broken. You need to be healed. I want you to be healed. And so he goes to Christ, to the healer. And he's healed slowly. Is that okay? Did he end with clear vision? He did. That was the point. That's what we need. So don't be overwhelmed at the fact that y'all aren't perfect yet. Perfect people like myself can be patient with that. But look back and let your hearts be filled with gratitude at how far the Lord has brought you, at how expansive your hearts have become for him. And do not settle there, because you're not perfect yet. But the Lord invites you to be. So continue that journey, a journey over the course of your life in which you have made great strides. And continue to make those great strides until the day the Lord calls you to himself, when he and he alone will make up in you what is lacking and what is perfect. That he, by the gift of his cross, will make up in you the perfection that you have not been able to make in yourself.